Welcome to Chok Muay Chats. I'm Joe Comerford, content creator, commentator for RWS, and aficionado in the world of Muay Thai. I'm here with an old friend, but a very special guest, my friend William Luu, who is a creative in the world of Muay Thai, has been around the scene for a long time, 15 years, doing ringside photography, helping promotions and scale promotions with creative direction. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Joe. Pleasure to be here. It's been a fun ride so far, seeing you from the Sydney days and then catching up with you in Thailand to where we are now, back in Australia and you're in Bangkok.
That's right. Yeah, it was. We caught up a couple of weeks ago. Probably been maybe nearly close to 10 years since I've probably seen you. Talking a
Yeah,
little
it's
bit
crazy.
online, but a lot's happened in that time. I suppose from your end, maybe just let's chat a little bit about what's probably happened in the last 20, not the last 20 years, the last 10 years. People will remember you from a lot of stuff with Rebellion and doing ringside photography and videography at Rebellion, and then also, helping a lot of fighters with their photography over the years. If you've ever seen any of the top tier promotions in Australia, you would recognize, Will's photography. And there you can see in the background there, myself. I think that was my last fight against Joe Coverdale, where he flattened me, Joe, the career ender Coverdale.
What's funny was I got to talk to you, both of you guys together. There was that iconic shot of him and you in that TKO finish, and I think there was another one a few shows later where it was the roles reversed. Someone did it to him, and it just happened
Ah.
to be at the same spot at the same time. And look, once you've been ringside for long enough, things just play out the same way, and you see the same things again. Same techniques, just different people, different faces, and it's hard sometimes. It's your friends that's on the receiving end, and it's business when you're in the moment, but afterwards, and you just check up to see if everyone's okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting that one because like I find this a lot with commentary is, I have a lot of friends that I have fight and I have to call their fights, and one of the things that I found over the last couple of years is having to disassociate yourself from the emotional side. And it's an interesting one because a, specific example would be Alfie Pierce, who you might know, English fighter has had a phenomenal career run, and I was holding pads for a lot for him at Japan, and helping him a fair bit with content and that stuff, and you sort of tend to develop a pretty strong relationship with these guys, and then you call their fights, and it's hard not to be biased towards them, but you have to disassociate yourself. Do you find that with, especially in the Australian scene, you're photographing a lot of these fighters that you have like fairly solid relationships, but you have just what you described there, like a moment where you'll see guys getting hurt. Do you find that you have to professionally disassociate yourself from that connection?
Yeah, 100%, man. Kind of found out the hard way starting out. I wasn't sure what feelings was going through myself and sort of had to go through it myself and process it myself and figure out what's the best way to go to navigate around this because there was no blueprint back then when I started out. And then obviously years and years later, as my network grew, I talked to people in our industry, not necessarily the same roles as me. Like I'll give you an example. Our guy Elias, number one referee, he would always say, "I don't see faces, I don't see names, I just see red and blue in that moment. So I'm that person." And you
Mm.
learn to, yeah, disassociate names and feelings and connections with people when you're on the job. It's just red and blue. And to that point, the lines do get blurred. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a weird thing having someone ringside and having no emotions when a knockout happens, when your friends are getting hurt. It's a weird thing. I don't think it's normal, and I don't think you can keep doing it for a long time because you start seeing violence and things on the street, and you don't know how to regulate yourself.
Mm.
Obviously, starting out, my first year, I was quite young, 21. You'd be in a corner taking pictures, seeing your friends getting pummeled, and the first thing you want to do is, yell out instruction, tell them what to do, and then as you get more professional, you have to say silence, and then you have to get over the fact that, is Joe going to think different of me because I'm not cheering for him, I'm not saying anything, I'm he might think I'm working against him. I think it just comes with maturity and experience that
Mm.
you're there for a job, especially if that is a job. Yeah, that's just experience and just maturity, I guess.
And I suppose, just going to that thought of standing ringside. You've been doing this for 15 years. What was the actual starting point for you? I mean, I know you've trained and you've had a few fights. You got a bit of experience in MMA as well. What was the turning point that like actually made you decide to take your creativity and channel it into being ringside?
Kind of fell into it, man. Literally fell into it. Started
Mm.
off in when I was like 19, 20, still training, still fighting, still fairly green. And I was cross training somewhere. Someone did a very dumb wrestling takedown, sprained my foot, couldn't walk for a few weeks. Picked up a camera, went into the gym as you would. When you can't train, you just want to be in that environment, immerse yourself. Started learning photography and how to use a camera in the gym itself. And my subjects were people training after. I suppose that's where I developed my personal style, my personal eye for my style of work. So learning the whole art of photography through hands-on experience, I didn't have any formal experience, and from that point, as we had fighters going to events, I'd tag along, and then eventually get my foot in the door. It wasn't easy back then, but I think it's different today. I would do things differently. I'm sure there's different ways of doing it now, but that was how I did it back then, and this long, slow, hard way, and then picking up my phone, making cold calls to promoters, talking to them, and back in the day, we still had the magazines, still had the international kickboxer forums, which are long gone now.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it's interesting to see how like a lot of the media has changed. The media landscape has changed massively from like our era where we had international kickboxer, and then you even had some of these promotions with Foxtel deals, and then Mark Hammer Castanini had the kind of that analytical show on Fox Sports as well. So yeah, it's interesting even just thinking that a little bit of nostalgia hitting me there,
I mean,
thinking about
think
the
about
media.
more than 10 years ago, there wouldn't really be a role defined for people like us and our
Mm,
community. Back then, you'd have your Hammers and your Chevellos, and they sort of encompass a lot of roles, and that
yeah.
was it. And then also the speed of media, the speed of results would be, I'd say, a week or 2 weeks. You'd see international kickboxer. I think that came out every month, every 2 months.
Mm,
That was the speed that people would receive media. Nowadays, it comes out almost instantaneously, or live even. And
yeah.
anything over a day, people would like, "Hey Joe, what's happening? What's the update? Are you okay? Are you dead?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then also, it's like I was talking to someone about this last night. Is they were talking about my content and how like a lot of mine is educational, but I need to tighten it up for the algorithm. And just have quick sound bites. Have the hooks, the almost make it clickbaity, and you almost need to do that now to get people's attention. Like 10 years ago, it was a bit of a slow burn effect with print media. As I said, Mark Hammer Castanini's Ringside show, like almost a Ringside reporter show, doing these media packages for a lot of fighters. But now you've got to basically have 15-second hooks because people's attention spans are just not there anymore. I think I was reading. I'm a teacher, and I read a lot about cognitive development and neurology in kids. And 10 years ago, 15 years ago, kids had a 14-second attention span. Now it's down to 4.3 seconds. So, it just shows you how quickly you have to gain people's attention. Now, just thinking about your career, I mean, you've been in this sport for a long time. If you could go back and restart WL fight photography, are there things that you would do differently now?
No one's ever asked that question to me before, and I haven't really thought that deep into that journey.
Mm,
I'm gonna say no for now because everyone has a different journey coming up, whether you're a gym owner, trainer, or a fighter. The way I started was a very slow burn coming from my
mm.
time. If I was to start today, again, I think I would say, like what I say in most interviews, enjoy the process, have fun doing it. I know your reason why you're doing what you're doing because there are times when you'll be alone. There are times when you'll give up personal time, family time, work time for a sport where two guys in short shorts are fighting in the ring, having sweat fly around, and you're either talking about their techniques or taking pictures of them for covers. Understand your why, whether you want to be a great media person, whether you want to help out. As long as you have your why, that's going to take you along the way.
Yeah, you know what? I think that is such an important crux of the issue there, understanding why and why you're doing this. For me, like, even even being in this sport for a long time, and my why has changed, throughout my journey, and currently I'm at quite a pivotal point. I was telling you this morning that I'm feeling a bit sort of burnt out, and it's also a personality issue of my own, of trying to take on way too much responsibility than I can handle. But also it comes back to, why am I doing this? Why? Well, one, because I love the sport, and one, I want fighters to have the opportunities that I didn't have. Um, and you have to constantly remind yourself, otherwise you will burn yourself. You will burn yourself out, and you'll fall out of love with the art and with the with the actual journey.
Well, for myself, coming from the gym background, because I think I speak the language that communicates between the media
Mm,
side and the gym side and vice
mm,
versa, having learned all my lessons, I guess, personal lessons, media lessons, business lessons from the gym. I guess it's all correlates. Like you ask fighters, why do you fight? Or I want to, be a world champion. Why do you fight? I want to have a bucket list challenge. I want to test myself. And then let's say they stop fighting. Why do you keep training? Oh, because I want to support the gym. And you've seen people at the gyms like, why aren't you training? Well, I don't have a fight. Why would I train? I think everyone's got a different why. I don't think it's wrong. It might not be right for the gym, but I think understanding that is really important.
yeah, absolutely. A Pinky and I talk about this a lot. About knowing your why, and having your reason why you're doing it, and you have to stick to your why. And as I said, your why can change. There's nothing wrong with your why changing, but you have to know the reason you're doing why you're doing it, and stick to that core value. Now, just thinking about your journey, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen, looking at the industry, like Australian Muay Thai industry? What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over the last 10 years? Because me personally, I haven't lived in Australia for 7 years now, and I've seen some massive changes. So, in the last 10 years, the first two of those 10, I'd sort of finished my fight career and then moved out to the country. Didn't have anything to do with Muay Thai, and then came over here, and looking from the outside in, massive changes. So what do you think are the biggest changes, for better or for worse, from
It's
your
funny.
perspective?
You said the last 10 years, and the first thought that comes to my mind, last 10 years, I'm thinking, yeah, 2006. No, 10 years ago was actually 2016. Because if I go
Mm,
back to 2006, that's like the contender days, the Foxtel days. Just change. I'd say, look, Australia, Melbourne, and Sydney, it's a hub for combat sports across all disciplines. You have your mixed martial arts, boxing, kickboxing, Thai boxing, grappling. I mean, the cage in Victoria wasn't legalized until 2014. I think the biggest change I've seen is the mainstream exposure, the acceptance of combat sports in wide mainstream media. I like to think I played a small part in helping that too, and also people like yourself, making it not seem as barbaric, which is, I suppose, that's obvious now, but also now making it more um, acceptable and more friendly and inviting for people to bring their families and watch as well. It's not seen as taboo anymore. Like it's, and the shift is, how integrated combat sports now is with mainstream culture, especially with mixed martial arts and MMA. How
Mm.
many gyms offer that stuff too, and also I think media and the training side of things go hand in hand.
Yeah, interesting. I think that's a big part of it as well. Making it. I suppose the word might be palatable for the everyday Joe. Like before, it was kind of there was certainly an underground or an underbelly element that had influence over combat sports in Australia traditionally, and now that
Oh,
seems in the last 10 years, I feel like that influence has sort of faded away a fair bit. And
I'll
then,
just give you a quick example. Maybe 10 years
mm,
ago, I would be competing every now and then with like photographers from the tabloids, from the news articles that would just
mm.
love to come to a cage event because it sounds great. Human cockfighting, people from the Herald Sun or whatever coming in just to get that bloody shot of people, face all battered up, and then come and go, and then use that as a headline, and then blast the sport about that. And then I think that's where I saw my role coming in. It's like what I'm capturing is I'm capturing the beauty and the art of the sport that we love, and showcasing what we see, what you see, to people, showing it's not all you know guts and blood. And our good friend Sinaji, when I used to do all his media work and design work, I rarely had any blood featured on any posters, which is a very cheap cop out way to get attention. I was always focused on showcasing the art of Muay Thai, the art
Mm.
of his promotion, and making something beautiful for us, but also something to draw in a new crowd. And that's how I saw my work in that era.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I totally resonate with that. If you look back at kind of that period, the 2016, 2017, and you look at the clean set design features of, kind of rebellion branding, yeah, certainly. Because like typically, typically graphic design for Muay Thai is explosions, fire, lots of spark. And I mean, look, I
There's a
I
time
cheap,
and place for that. I did it too.
I cheaply cop out on that. Um, within my own sort of graphic design. Um, that's one of the things that I always loved about Rebellion was the clean branding, and we're starting to see that through a lot more through other promotions. Like 1774 are sort of shifting towards that. However, they've kind of got the uh, Thai style antiquity backgrounds. RWS have got really clean set feature designs. One championship of got really clean cut designs, and I think it just it feels to me it professionalizes the sport a lot more having clean cut design, and I don't think people realize how important design and imagery are to promotions.
Well, fun
Um,
fact, with my design background, I think I did the media and artwork for the Rebellion series for about almost 10 years, I think. And I started off doing, I think maybe up the first 10, 1774 artwork designs too. And also the early days for Siam to Sydney.
mm,
And look, I think elevating sport and branding to a professional level is very important. Like I love what RWS does, and I think one of the chats that Kieran from Moyu said about his gym, like he wanted that collegiate uh,
Mm, mm.
football feel, like that team vibe, and I think he translated that very well to his brand and team and his vibe.
Yeah, and I think that's it's an important thing to have that consistent branding and imagery throughout promotions and combat sports. Whatever direction you take, you have to be kind of consistent with it. I mean, you look at MTL and MTL, they've got as well the kind of NBA collegiate theme, the kind of American baseball theme going on with their stuff. And I spoke to Nakia on my podcast as well, where she was talking about her background in American sports when she was living in America, and took that branding with her, and as well as Kieran with the collegiate theme. And you look at PTJ. Andy comes from hip hop and graph background, and you can see that go through the kind of the '90s Sydney hip hop and um, street lifestyle and streetwear kind of branding throughout their merchandise. So it's interesting, looking at the kind of the design features coming through combat sports. How important do you think strong design and imagery is in Muay Thai?
100%, man. 100%. Coming from personal experience, even without my background in design and marketing, it's crucial. At the end of the day, it's two people in a ring or in gym, it's just a studio, a ring, and some bags. What sets you apart? It's obviously the equipment would set you apart, the trainers will set you apart, but the vibe and atmosphere that you create inside, but also how you represent yourself in a print base, and now these days a visual space, media base, web base, and so on. Like the language you use, how do you call your classes? Are you one of those gyms that's very old school and just says the fighters only gym and use traditional names for classes, or are you very open and inviting to try to educate and invite more people to try the sport? I think it's very important. I don't think it's a right or wrong way. I just think it's just something for
Mm.
everyone based on where you are and who you want to capture.
Do you think it's important kind of having your own personal touch on imagery as opposed to just following trends and trying to, I suppose, carbon copy, or in when we talk about graffiti, biting style? Do you think it's important for gyms to have their own personal touch when they're working with graphic designers or media people?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously you can get inspired, get references, and do
Mm,
parodies, but there's a borderline which sometimes you just don't know how far you're crossing. Because
mm,
I'm sure you've seen a lot of gyms that would rip off logos from other gyms, and in their mind it's like, no, it's different because it's black, it's not white, or it's tiger, it's a lion.
mm. Yeah, 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 100%, 100%. Yeah.
Well, I'll send you some examples. It's hilarious.
I can already think of examples from my own, uh, from yeah, within the Australian Muay
I
Thai
can think
scene.
of about three in your hometown of Sydney right now.
We won't go into it because we'll annoy too many people. But yeah, yeah,
I could
funny.
easily have them pop up right now.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'll have the JPEGs pop up. Um, Now, just going back to your own personal journey, and just an anecdotal thing, talking about the design thing. I have this memory on Facebook, talking about how you were doing the designs for Rebellion for the longest time. I don't know if you remember this, but you did a photoshopped version of a Rebellion card in the style of a Bangla Stadium poster. I don't know if you remember that, but it was
Wait,
probably one of the
I'll
funniest.
bring it up.
It was probably one of the funniest things that I'd seen in the longest time. Can you talk
But
us?
that, yeah, that comes from passion. That comes from
Mm,
a nerd. I think a lot of our close friends in the sport, you'd call all of us nerds. You know, you
Mm.
must love the sport, you must understand the sport, you must understand the context of that sport to do something like that because look, some people could make that because they just want the likes, they want the attention or whatever. I just did it because it's fun. I loved it at the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, it's highly contextual, and it's a highly contextual joke between all of us. But it shows you, the how nuanced design is within this space. I mean, you look at the difference between like a lot of these tourist stadiums, and they almost have like a template that they all follow. It's almost like a template that they all follow for their for their design, and then the difference between promotions like RWS or One, or even like some of the Pet and D promotions now that are much more clean cut in their design. But then you've got the tourist stadiums that almost follow the same template. It's just funny.
Again, it's not wrong. It's right for the demographic. It's right for the people, like those Bangla stadiums. You think about who is your core demographic, just travelers, people who's just very casual. It's a casual way to see it. If there's Muay Thai fights, so you put certain graphics to really attract them. And so, Joe's from America, someone's from Thailand.
Mm,
Big fight. Here's your belt. Here's the price tag. It's a real fight. Come in. That's what they need. And I suppose the language has to be more polished for like a One or RWS.
mm.
Like I think if you dive in deep, you can go in for hours and just look at the little details and nuances.
Now, just coming back around to the conversation, I'm doing a podcast with you. For people who don't know, can you describe who you are and what you've actually done in the last kind of 10 to 15 years in combat sports?
I'm a martial artist first. I started off like everyone else, someone going to a gym, wanting to learn a martial art across MMA, BJJ, Muay Thai, having a few fights, and then falling into media, and then almost like taking a side route instead of the typical route of fighting, and finishing up, and that's it. So taking that side route allowed me access to events, access to gyms, seeing it in a different way, not talking about seeing it through the lens, talking about seeing how a gym may operate, seeing the people, really having a nice look into the gym's culture, the vibe. It's a privilege going to gyms and doing media shoots for gyms, seeing how classes are run, seeing how instructors are run, seeing how, the culture, every gym I go to, the culture trickles down from the top.
Mm,
If the head, if the head coach is the top person, then everyone else would follow. And then you go to events, seeing how it's run, seeing the people behind them, seeing the productions, and yeah, along the way, producing content, producing media, starting off with photography for the longest time, ringside events, gym events, only in the last 3 or 4 years, I think post COVID, did I start to dabble in video because
mm.
I thought I needed a challenge. I wanted to try something different. I'm still learning. I'm having fun doing that and doing design along the way, doing graphic design, poster design, social media things for promotions like the ones we mentioned. And it can get a bit overwhelming. And I think for someone like myself who has a strong creative mind, you need to uh, realize when you're getting burnt out, realize when you're
Mm.
taking on too much. Otherwise, it's all going to come crumbling down. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely can resonate with that. I mean, I'm at this sort of crossroad point at the moment. Having to sort of figure out when to say no and not take on too much responsibility. You actually.
So starting out, saying yes. I think starting out, I would say to everyone, say yes to as many things as you can. And being at that age that I was, 2021, look, I copped a lot of, like, I had a lot of knockbacks. I've had a lot of people trying to stand over me, which is fine. You do what you do in that industry. I've had
Mm,
similar friends starting out at a later age. I think it was like 26, 27, similar time. Obviously, matured a lot, so they pushed back a lot with the people in our industry, which ended up closing a lot of doors on them. I'm not saying you have to say yes to everything, but it's a good time to test the waters. That makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say that too if you're young and you've got the energy to say yes. I mean,
Mm.
with a lot of this stuff, like people, I often get asked, "Oh, how do you get started and how do you monetize off it?" It's like, well, you really have to just do a lot of free work. You can't monetize off it straight away. You just have to get your foot in as many doors as possible and build yourself. And then eventually, opportunities will come. Like now, I don't really go seeking opportunities. They sort of just come to me now. Whereas before, I was going and seeking a lot and building my own opportunities. But now, as I get older and I've got less energy and more responsibility, it becomes harder to go searching for them. And you can be a little bit more picky and choosy as to the stuff that you take on. And I think you have to. I mean, when you get to our age and you start getting a bit weathered around the eyes and hair start to get grayer, you can sort of pick and choose a little bit more. Now,
Yeah.
just looking at you know your work over the last kind of 15 years, do you think that WL fight photography became part of your identity, or do you think
Yeah.
the work and the identity are separate?
I think both. I think there are times when they both can overlap. And
Mm,
with anything, sometimes you go through a bit of an identity crisis. It's like, who am I without this? And vice versa. Um, and I kind of just stumbled across the name because when I started out, because the gym I was with, they pushed me saying, you need to watermark your work, you need to have it a brand name, you need to have this so people can recognize who you are and contact you from there. You can call yourself whatever you want, just be clear about what you do. Fight photography. Okay, that means combat sports.
mm.
Same as yourself, really. And I think I was talking to someone not long ago talking about other photographers. If you call yourself a wedding photographer and you start putting half naked dudes kicking people in the head in your feed, it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be a strange wedding to go to, as well. Um, but yeah,
But you know
100%.
what? Having said that, I do weddings, and I think 90% of the weddings I've done now are all people from this combat sport, either close friends, gym owners, fighters.
Yep.
Actually, I think they all are people from the sport.
Interesting. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, because we're a pretty close knit community. But just going back to that thought about the branding and the identity, you have to be clear about who you are and what you're doing. I think at my point now, people sort of know what I do. Kind of a voice and an educator, and probably not just a commentator, but more a social commentator, almost like a radio host, in a sense, a social commentator on Muay Thai. And I think when people see the Joe Comerford Muay Thai brand, they know, they kind of know now, like what I do, trying to bridge that gap between Western and Thai Muay Thai.
On
Um,
that note, I'm talking about branding. I think that branding's important. Look, I think there's plenty of work, plenty of opportunities for everyone like yourself and myself to do this.
mm,
And taking a page out of Mitch Tinley, who runs Australian MMA,
mhm,
something he said was like, there's plenty of other interview hosts and podcasters. It's just up to how well that person communicates with whoever. Let's say I like Joe's style. I'm gonna talk to Joe. Let's say to someone else like Joe doing what you're doing, but I just don't resonate the same way. You just give off a different energy, and it's fine. It's like people doing media who has a different energy to me because they will draw out something else from different people.
mm, mm. Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. You don't have to like people don't have to like your work, because there's plenty of other people doing it as well, and you just have to be comfortable with that. And especially I often say this is that no one owns Muay Thai. You can't gatekeep Muay Thai. You're not the only guy. And like, I'm sure there are people who don't like what I have to say or don't like my voice. That's fine. There's other people who are doing similar thing and you can go and look at their content. That's fine. Like I'm not going to be palatable and you're not going to be palatable for everyone. There are probably other photographers who are doing a different style that people might like, or, just different aesthetic. Now, look, do you when you were building over the last couple of years, do you feel or did you ever feel pressure to stay relevant because the scene expects you to be everywhere or the industry expects you to be everywhere?
Define what you mean by stay relevant.
Well, I suppose from a work point, like at the moment we're living in this attention economy. And I feel, at least from my own personal perspective, I've got to constantly be pushing content out there to keep up with the constant demands of people's attention. Did you ever feel that pressure that you have to constantly be seen to be able to get more work or to stay centered in the scene?
I'd say in my younger days, yes, for sure. It's a very addictive game, and I suppose it comes from fighting and martial arts as well. You want to be at the top. I
Mm,
suppose like if oh, I was never a world beater, but if I was someone chasing to be at the top, you need that. You need to let people know what you're doing. You need to keep chasing the next one, keep chasing the next one, and sometimes even when you're at the top, what do you do from there? How do you stay relevant? For me, look, I'm not that old, not that young. I still know the magazines, but I came at an age where social media was taking off, Facebook was taking off, and I sort of came, my work and my time just came hand in hand to promotions that needed someone like me at the time. Me, what I offered to combat sports in Australia 10 years ago was helping promote the sport in a platform, Facebook, sharing things and just getting more exposure. Me being at the age that I was able to resonate with fighters who were fighting and just not just giving them something to look back on, but also helping their profiles, helping their vanity and helping the promotions grow as well. Because before me, the people doing media were a bit older and their platform was a little bit dated.
mm.
And then, as times grew, social media kicked in, live feed and things like that. I'll give you an example of what my process was back then. You go to an event, you do all the highlights, and then you would edit them and what else? You would give them to the promoters, but then you would upload them to the platform at the time, which is Facebook, tagging everyone, making sure everyone understood, everyone got tagged, they knew what was happening, and then you would do it for every show that you'd go to. And I think doing that helped define your presence and helped keep you relevant. But then you got to a point when new promotions wouldn't know what's involved. They just said, okay, I want you to just work for me, but they didn't understand the extra work involved. And
Mm.
it's up to them to learn, or sometimes up to someone like me to explain a process. And things change and media change, platform changes. So yeah, like you said, you just got to keep up with what is relevant right now.
Yeah, it's funny you say, it kind of leads into my next question, talking about expectations because you and I both know that people within our sport have different expectations of what you can and can't deliver. And
What's that?
they
What's
do,
that quote? You give an inch and then they take a mile.
they take a
What's that quote?
mile, yeah, yeah, you give an inch, they take a mile. And you know certain people have different expectations, but they may not communicate that clearly. And I think that's a really important thing. If people are listening to this, is if you are going to hire a media person, you really need to like set your expectations early and clearly. Otherwise, and I think this is anything, business related, you have to be clear with communication and expectations. Otherwise, resentment and other emotions can build up very quickly between, lack of communication or, lack of expectations being met. What's the hardest expectations in your mind to manage in fight media.
I think, like I said earlier, after a while, you're sitting in ringside, you're going to see the same shots over and over again. It's exciting. Anyone starting out, your main goal, I assume your main goal is to get ringside access. I assume it's to get a nice front cover. I don't know if kids these days still want a front cover shot or they just want a nice cover for the reels. But for me, getting onto IK magazine front cover, double page spread, I was happy with that. I think after you get those cool shots, the pressure on me was to keep that standard up and just making sure I don't miss a moment, making sure I get those clean knockout shots. And look, being in ringside, being in fight sports, anything can happen. A fight can end so quickly, a fight can drag out and nothing can happen. A fight can be a fake fight and then you don't have anything. Um, and it's almost on you. Sometimes a production and promotion, they would cut corners and not have lighting, not have the right setup, have poor matchmaking, and in turn, you can't get the stuff that you need. That makes sense.
Mm.
It's like someone says, "Oh, hey, I've seen the stuff you do for Rebellion. I've seen the stuff you've done at UFC. Can you please do it for my shed show with no lights?" And then you deliver that. It's like, where's this? Where's that? I'm like, you got guys wearing headgear, wearing padding, and I can't get anything. It's an excuse, but again, that comes down to communication, telling them, hey, I was able to achieve that because of this, this, and this. You have this, this, and this. Realistically, you won't get that. How does that
Yeah.
make sense?
How do you deal with that kind of that where are my photos energy, especially when you're dealing with promoters? Because I mean, like a lot of guys, especially in Muay Thai, they don't kind of understand creative direction. They don't understand like creative limitations. You just use the example as like the the shed show with no lighting and the lighting's crap, and you still deliver a reasonable product, but in their mind, you know they're like, where's my photos? This isn't what I asked for. How do you kind of deal with that?
Maybe it's an Australian thing, but I just have a little laugh to myself and I just air it out to my close friends. And when I think enough of my friends enjoy it, that side of things, I start to air it out to more people. Not in a way where I'm calling them out, because you've seen me post these things before. I do it in a way where I sort of make fun, make light of the situation, but at the same time drawing awareness. And I think there was a point when I was doing it so often that a lot of friends in the community and also outside the community, they knew what was going on and they would start to help deliver, help explain to people when that happens, whether it's my photos or someone else's work. I think I helped get that um, get that message across so people like me don't burn out in the future. Because if you internalize all these little bits and pieces, people wanting things from you, you will burn out. But if you're able to not take it to heart, they don't know, they don't understand the process. It's a lot better for your mental health as well. Because when I
Mm.
was actively training at the gym years ago, people would say to me, "Oh, Will, do people actually ask you for this and that, this and that?" I'm like, yeah. And then once they start seeing it, then they're educated. So when they hear it elsewhere, they'll start spreading the message too. And I think most of the things I air out, I don't take it too seriously. I add a bit of humor to it, so it's not too serious.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I think that's a good approach to have to it. Just keep it light-hearted as well, but also keeping it honest. Thinking back to those days, what boundaries do you wish you kind of set earlier on, or what boundaries do you think people coming into the sport should set early?
I think social media is a great platform to air things out and promote yourself. At the same time, it can make you very vulnerable, especially if you're too tied to the brand. And that's sort of like what we're saying. Let's say I feel like I can talk to Joe as a friend, but sometimes I want to talk to Joe as a commentator, Joe as a creative, and that's when boundaries clash. I think having separate, you can say separate accounts or separate profiles to help. One's personal, one's private, one's public. Being okay with telling people, hey, sorry, this is my personal thing for family and friends. If you want to communicate with me about sports or about media, let's talk for this channel. Having that early on really helps you be a
Mm.
bit more sane. I made the mistake early on when I was 23, 24, replying to everything on my personal page, tagging everyone personally, messaging everyone, replying to messages at like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, falling asleep. I could do it back then, but now I would not do that. Again, see you online, people see you talking, they think it's an open pathway just to talk to you directly. And sometimes even if I stop doing that, if the new generation start doing that too, they think it's okay to just do it as well.
Yeah, I mean that it's a big thing because people forget that you've got a personal life as well. Like both of us, over the last couple of years got married and starting to settle down. I'm looking to have kids in the next little while, and when once that happens, you haven't really got the time to be able to respond to everyone. And I think this is a big thing for this next generation. Not only creatives, but fighters who want to get in touch. You guys have got to respect other people's time a little bit more. Like I get,
Joe, on my wedding day, I had someone say, "Hey, congrats on the wedding. Hey, can I please get my photos?"
wow, yeah, yeah,
It
that's
happens, and like I think that if I was to share every message like that, people wouldn't believe it.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, it's astounding. It's astounding. Like people take the Mickey. I've been getting a lot of messages, and I even start responding. Look, I will try and get back to you soon, but right now I'm super busy. And they'll be asking me questions about, oh, how do I move to Bangkok, or how do I make this happen? How do I get this fight? Okay, I will get back to you. I had somebody blow up in my inbox the other day, like, oh, if it's too hard to respond, don't respond at all. Just relax, mate. Like, I'll get back to you when I can. Like I'm not. I might start charging you a consultancy fee next time.
I think someone like us understanding where is it coming from, like understanding are they paying you, are they
Yeah.
trying to get work of you? Is it an employer? Is it a client? Is it someone you've done work for and they need something? I think there's a difference. I think if you lump everyone together, it's going to be very messy. I think just
Mm,
again, just filtering it, making your own filters as well.
mm. I mean, it's good you say these things because I'll tell you what, I'm learning and taking a lot away from this as well. Now, what's your rule now for free work versus paid work? Because I think that's a really important one. When we're talking about this space.
Understanding, I suppose, understanding the pros and cons of each job. For example, the paid work, is it paying well? Is it my line of work? Is it on brand? Is it going to hurt my brand? Um, am I saying by saying yes to this, am I going to say no to something else? I suppose being at our stage of life, sometimes there's more than just work. It's like, is it going to affect, my family time? Is going to affect this and that. Same thing
Mm,
with free work. If
yeah.
it's free work, is it going to give me more exposure? Is it going to lead to more work? Is it going to help my brand or hurt my brand? And I think some of these things you can brush off and say, okay, it's free work. I'm sure I'll get more work from this. But how can you be sure? How do you find these things out? And I think these are the questions you need to ask yourself.
Mm.
Look, sometimes these days I've taken free work over paid work because I've had fun. I've done it for a long time. I just want to do things that challenges me or things I enjoy working with.
Mm, yeah, 100%. And it's always kind of a tricky thing to navigate as well,
And I
knowing.
think on that note, I think something we both talked about is sometimes the biggest profile gig isn't the best paying one, but in turn, the exposure it's there, and vice versa. Sometimes the ones you dread the most, the pay is a lot better, so you pick your battles.
Yep, 100%. There's pros and cons with everything and trade offs for everything. Now, just thinking about our age, I mean, we're not old men, but we're certainly getting to a mature age where we have to start thinking about different priorities. Now, how does, without going too much into your personal life, we spoke a little bit about when you're doing this work, you do sacrifice a lot of personal time. Like being a fighter, you sacrifice a lot of personal time. How does being in a fight, how does being in fight media affect relationships realistically? Yeah, I mean, like, just you don't have to go into your personal relationship, but opportunities with family and your loved ones. How does it affect that?
Well, a lot of things happen in the 20s, people's birthdays, social gatherings. You say no to a lot of those things. I'm fortunate to have a partner and a wife who understands sport. It's very forgiving, and she's actually assisted me on shows before.
Hmm.
And a fun fact, I met her when I was teaching a women's only Muay Thai class, so it all comes together. And I don't regret that. Like that's all part of the whole. Um, it's just funny how things turn out. What's the question?
Oh,
What was the question again?
how does being in fight media affect your relationship realistically?
Everyone's relationship is different. I think having an understanding what you're doing and who you're spending time with and how many hours are you really going to be away for? Because I don't think many people understand the work involved in what you do, what I do. Oh, Joe just turns up and just talks for a bit, goes home. I think for me as well, oh, he just turns up ringside, does a few shots, goes home, and that's it. Well, there is editing involved. And then there is the planning and equipment and what that involved. And then there is editing, but then post that, it's like file optimization, handling, delivering it, contacting people. And that eats into your own family time and training time at the start of the week as well. And then factoring into that when you're constantly booked out, that affects the next job and the next job. And something I've just realized why you get burnt out sometimes is fight week is chaotic. A lot of stress, a lot of dramas, getting things together, especially working with so many promoters in Australia at different points. You know, ticket sales, a fighter's going to make weight, a fighter's injured, visa issues, blood issues, venue stuff.
Mm.
Working closely with a promotion, whether you're doing the photography, design, or the helper, somehow you do take on a bit of that stress as well. You
Mm.
feel the pressure. And then, after you've done that events, that's all good. That promotion won't come back to like another 3 or 4 months. The following week, you're taking on another pressure, another promotion's pressure. It's like week after week, all that energy, all that build up, it's ramping up more and more. Especially if you're doing multiple shows in a week. I think that's something you don't really talk about. No one really sees, no one really feels unless you've done the events like what you've done, what I've done.
Mm. Yeah, it's a funny one that people see. I suppose they see the immediate product or they see the immediate work that you're doing, but they don't see any of the preparation or the behind the scenes sacrifice that you're making, to make these things happen. And I mean, considering the amount of hours you actually put in comparison to the pay or the compensation you're getting, they're not really equal on the scales of justice. You know, it really annoys me sometimes. I get sort of in passing comments about commentary or, oh man, it must be, must be fun, a dream job to,
Mm.
just talk about Muay Thai and, you get paid to talk about Muay Thai. Well, it's more than just that. It's more than that. Like you guys don't see the hours of preparation that you're doing and research that goes into it, and then not only that, like I do all the extra media stuff. So it's like people sort of sit on the outside and think, oh, I wish I could do that, but well, I
I
don't know
think
if you,
I think everyone gets that too. I get that a lot, and
yeah,
also, fighters get that a lot too. Oh, it must be cool just jumping into the ring and having a fight, winning in the first round. But do you realize all the work leading up to that, all the things sacrificed leading up to
mm,
it?
yeah, it's a funny one for sure. Now, just looking at your work itself, a lot of the reason why we do what we do is to make a difference and help build up the respective sports that we're involved in. I mean, you're involved in a lot more than just Muay Thai, MMA, and you've done boxing shows as well. And I've done a bit of boxing media as well. You've tried to contribute positively to fighters promotions, helping market them. What do you think making a difference actually looks like?
I think there's many ways to look at that. Making a difference might be, let's say, understanding people's journeys and why they fight. Let's say I'll use you as an example. Having content for Joe so he can look back in his journey and using that content for himself as you do what you do now, making a difference from a promotion side of you, getting media for that show so they have content that they can use to showcase what they do, what they produce, the production, to chase more sponsors. I think there's a lot of reasons like that making a difference in that way. The challenge of how do you make combat sports look nice and clean and not brutal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Which I
yeah.
think I like to think we've passed that stage now. I think it's just about how do you just keep that consistent level going.
Yeah, absolutely. I would 100% agree with that. We're beyond that point of it being a blood sport. Now it's a professional. It's funny, we don't really use the term fighters anymore. We use the term professional athlete or combat athlete. And I think the there's a big shift in the mentality, even just within the use of the meta language that I've been seeing over the last kind of 5 years. Combat nutrition instead of weight cut. You know, just some of the shift in the language that we use as well. Interesting that you say that. Now, I don't know if you want to do this, but I think it would be a little bit interesting to talk about perhaps a point or an example. You don't have to name names, but a moment in time when you felt that your work has particularly genuinely helped the fighter's career.
I don't have a specific moment, but I'm sure moments like these have been used before. How do you build a profile? How do you take yourself seriously as a professional athlete? You invest in yourself, you invest in media. It doesn't need to be expensive. It can even be done with a camera as long as you know what you're doing, what to look out for.
Mm.
If you want to be treated, if you want it to be taken seriously, you must invest in yourself. Basic things like making yourself look good, having nice media profiles, basic stuff like that. It's fine. I think I've helped people by giving them professional images that they can use to help elevate their brand and chase more sponsors to build upon that as well. And there's a gym that I've been to where at the time was heavily using Twins gear. And then I think
Mm.
there was a photo shoot that I'd done with that, and I think Twins reached out and then a partnership aligned.
Mm.
So when things like that happen, it's like, oh, it's cool. These silly pictures I've taken, it's actually helped in these ways.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting you say that, because especially now more than ever, like fighters need to treat themselves as a branding tool, to get to basically monetize as much as possible. If they want to be, professional fighters, really, like you want to take as much, I suppose, inconvenience out of the process as much as possible of being a fighter, especially in Australia where a lot of fighters basically work 9 to 5s or, they're not full-time professional fighters. Really, they're part-time professional fighters. And, by investing in things like media and raising your profile, it takes that burden away because you want to monetize as much as possible.
If I could say
And I'm
one thing
not.
at that point,
Mm.
investing in yourself doesn't mean someone charging you an arm and a leg. It can be done
Mm.
as a favor. It can be done as an exchange of services. Let's say I am a fighter and I know someone in this media. We might exchange services. I might give you some PTs in exchange for some media. It doesn't. I think that's the biggest entry for people thinking it's going to charge an arm and a leg. I'll do it myself and I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to get someone to do it for free and then I might burn that relationship. Back to
Mm.
what you said about resentment. I think if you have a clear way of saying it, defining what you're wanting from someone, having agreed upon exchange of services or something like that. I think that's going to help you grow as well.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I think I would agree with that. Now, just looking about the last, as I said, and I've mentioned it many a time, you've been in the sport a long time. What does the next 12 months look like for you? I mean, you've done nearly 15 years in combat sports alone. What's the next 12 months hold for you?
Well, as you know, we've spoken about this before. I've decided to take a step back, a hiatus, farewell, you might say, from event photography,
Hmm.
fight nights, and the whole nighttime events, just to give myself a break. I'm still involved in the combat sports scene. I'm still going to be in gyms. I'm going to have more time to myself, enjoying doing what I like doing, still be part of the media side of things, um, and doing something different. Combat sports, like fight nights, it does take a lot out of you, like what we said
Mm.
about the weekly stress and the build up, time away from yourself, from your family and your loved ones, especially someone hitting our age. It's that pivotal point. It's like, what kind of husband or father do you want to be? Do you want to be someone who's constantly away, or you want to be someone present? And
Mm.
that's a personal choice. For myself, I think I've had my fun, I've done my time, and yeah, I think I'm excited to see what the new wave of people and see what direction things will take it. Um, See how much I've slacked off and how much they can fix things up from what I've done.
Yep. And I think there's a lot that they can learn from your journey. And I mean, there's plenty of resources out there that they can listen to. I mean, you've been on a fair few podcasts. You've been on Matt Lucas's podcast recently, and Bundy and the girls in Melbourne. Som's podcast as well. And your own as well. You were doing you had your own podcast there for a while, looking at the different frames as well. If you keep a foot in the sport, what kind of projects do you think you'd be working on?
I'd love to continue doing my video series podcast because I thought at the time that was a very different angle, something unique. It's like sharing, and I would love to do one with yourself, sharing these intimate stills and then talking to you about what went through my mind when I was taking this and hearing your thought process about what was going through your mind. And I think it's a
Mm.
very um, unique angle that we could take, and that's something I'd love to do. I think I stopped that because it became too much work again, burnout, overload. Something's going to give. If nothing's going to give, then it's all going to crumble. So I think you have to start dropping some things. Look, the game's changed, the landscape's changed a bit. What worked for me 10 years ago, I don't think it's going to work now. So I think it's up to people now to find what works for them and take them to the next step. I don't know why. I keep talking about your hometown, Sydney. I think one day when I was at home doing something, I had a random call from this photographer. No context. Hey, Will, I'm so and so. How do I get more work? What are you talking about? I found your number from website. I just want to get more work. How do I get more work in combat sports? And I
Mm.
was sort of talking about what you're talking about. And then I asked him, how long have you been doing it for? He said, 6 months. I'm sure you've had something similar like that too.
Oh, but yeah, get it all the time. And I suppose especially now, because a lot of people are running away from the West. Like, a lot of people are disenchanted with living in the States and in England and Australia. I've been here seven years now, and I get the question, oh, how do I move over? How do I make things work, especially in Muay Thai? And well, been doing this a long time. It's not, doesn't happen overnight, because I suppose, like, even building followers on Instagram, for me it's been a slow burn, because I've done things my way, and I've done things that I would like to personally see. I don't do it for, clickbait or trying to hack the algorithm. And so for me, it's going to be a much slower burn doing it that way, doing content that I would like to see myself.
I don't know if you're the same way with me. Like, sorry,
Mm.
when I give out advice, I always tell them, take it with a grain of salt. This is what's worked for me. I don't want to be liable for what you do. I think anyone asking questions, they should be aware of you're not going to get the blue book, the blueprints. It's just what's worked for Joe, what's worked for me. Take it, use what you can from there, but also find your own path along the way. Don't be
Yeah,
afraid to make mistakes. Don't just use what Joe's done, and then when it doesn't work, Joe sold me something shitty.
yeah, exactly. And I mean that's the thing. Everybody's going to have different experience as well. I mean, you can learn from other people's mistakes for sure. That's part of learning from history, but you also have to have leeway to make your own mistakes as well. But also, make calculated, informed risks. Don't go in blind. I'm not the blind leading the blind, but certainly
I,
take
I still
calculated.
make mistakes. Talking on Matt's podcast, I still make mistakes. I made a mistake last week, but you live and learn.
Yeah, I mean, I always make mistakes. That's part of being human. Now, just looking at your legacy, and I think you've built a fairly solid legacy over the last 15 years. What would you love your legacy to be in the Australian fight scene? How would you, when everything's done, how would you like to be remembered in Australian combat sports?
I I don't think that much of myself. I just want people to enjoy some of the iconic photos I've taken. And again, I'm not someone who would say, "Oh, these are my favorite images. I love these images." I think I like images that tell a story or tell a story in a pivotal point of our Muay Thai history. Like I'll use the example of the John Wayne Parr and Toby Smith fight. I think it was one of the most nervous times in my media career because I was ringside for that event. I was the only one doing media that day and
Mm,
capturing that finish. And I think that was circulated a lot. And I think when you look back in Muay Thai history in Australia the last 15 years, if my work can be used to help tell a story, if my work can be used to help showcase what's happened, I'm happy.
amazing, amazing. Well, what I might do, my friend, is might wrap it up there. Thank you for coming on to the my podcast and talking about your journey and talking about what the future holds for you and stepping away a little bit from now on, and also just two old men exchanging war stories and ideas and sitting fireside
Yeah,
and
they have good skincare clinics in Bangkok. I'm saying you have so many things at your disposal. Especially if you're
but
going to be live on Thai TV, you need that glossy look.
yeah, exactly. These crow's feet, they're certainly not helping me. Well, my friend, thank you for joining me. Guys, if you like this podcast, please like, share, subscribe. You can find it on Spotify and YouTube. Will, where can people find you online?
You can find me through my personal. Oh, sorry, you can find me through my media page, WL Fight. WL Fight. Let's restart that. You can find me on my media page, WL Fight Photography, on Instagram and Facebook, and yeah, you can find the rest if you dig hard enough.
That's right. Yeah, don't find him on the personals. Well, thank you for joining, my friend. It's been very insightful and great to sort of pick your brain about a few things. And I wish you the best for the future. And hopefully we can sit down and do this again, maybe in a couple of months' time. And we can talk about what developments have been happening and how life is in a few months' time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Chok Muay Chats. Please like, share, subscribe. I'm Joe Comerford, and thank you.
Thank you.